So one interesting challenge that we came across while we were going through some of the conceptual stages of the project is when we were speaking with Peter Gabalia, who actually commissioned us for this project. Um, we went through and sort of showed him some of the environmental things that they could do in the area to protect the rainforest and deal with issues such as malaria and clean water and public health. And one of the points that he brought up was that as great as those things are, when you have a population that's 80% unemployed, they're going to be more interested in how can they start generating revenue in that area rather than focusing on some of the environmental and health concerns, which we thought was strange, but we sort of went with it. So phase one attempts to resolve that a little bit by focusing on some of the building blocks of the economic education by learning how certain practices within sustainability and permaculture can be used to create economic growth for that area in a way that's more sustainable and more ecologically and culturally sensitive to the needs of that area. So, teaching just basic building blocks of tool making instead of, as an alternative from, waiting until you can afford to pay for shovels or for an NGO to bring you tools from China. These are things that they can actually locally source. Fibers was another. I was kind of shocked when we were told that some of the people there didn't really think that malaria was a big deal, and then I thought, well, that could just be a Western thing. Um, which, I mean, if you look at population data for developing nations, it actually makes a lot of sense. But one of the key issues that they're having in this area right now is that they're not able to get teachers. And so I know that when I've talked to other people about teaching in places like Liberia and certain parts of Africa, the big thing that I've heard that has been a deterrent has been, oh gosh, they have malaria there. Oh, drinking clean water. For me, I'm a vegetarian, so that's, another thing that could come up. And so, um, one of the, like, while there are a lot of cultural differences in terms of what we think is important, in order for the villagers of Duayee to be able to secure some of the resources they need, particularly teachers, they're going to have to learn how to identify what some of the concerns are, just like we have to figure out what some of their issues are. It kind of goes both ways. So this would be a way to sort of do that. So by teaching them things like how to use fibers and from local grasses and things that grow to create shading, create mosquito nets, textiles, things that they can sell to Westerners that come in, researchers, teachers, things that are gonna be important and would be a great source of revenue. They can get a better understanding of learning that some of the things that they don't realize have value may do, they just may not understand it. And so I think it opens up a dialogue for cross cultural intercommunication, but also it creates a mindfulness that there are differences in the cultural histories and heritage as well. We also wanted to make sure that we really emphasize introducing the advantage of recognizing the value in some of these materials so that they can know what to cultivate and know how certain things like fiber and bamboo, they have multiple functions, so that's going to be something that's going to have more value than a cash crop like jatropha has, creates fuel. But there are other things that create some of the same sources that have multiple uses as well. um, so part of the phase one, we looked at like natural building, how bamboo could be used as for reinforcing some of the building structures, especially things that are made from clay. It's actually supposed to be stronger than reinforced concrete. Industrial retrofits like bamboo rainwater catchment could be used to catch water off of rooftops, since they do get a lot of rain there, but they don't necessarily have clean water in the rivers due to mining upstream. Charcoal filtration for water bottling, that's going to be something huge. People don't want to go there if they don't have clean water to drink, and this is something that the villagers may not necessarily understand, but by putting them through these practices of how to do it, it beats bringing in an expensive facility like Tetra Pak, which was something that I was asked to look into, and it's very expensive. And it's something that they can do and locally source and get the same benefits, but something that's much more affordable, and it teaches them much more about the process as well. We also talked about how earthworks could be used to improve water quality around the region to reduce the amount of mosquitoes. Planting mangroves, a lot of those got destroyed during the Civil War, and that was something that was keeping a lot of the ecology in balance, so that they weren't having as many problems with the mosquitoes. I can't remember what the name of the fly is, but having those things to reduce the spread of disease and rebuild the infrastructure using local materials. One thing that we also talked about was that there seems to be a huge waste problem in Duayee, and so teaching permaculture principles like the cradle to cradle, looking at waste management, not just from a trash standpoint and integrating composting, but also solid waste or human waste, using something like methane harvesting to create fuel instead of paying, for the village having to save up to pay for a generator that runs for 2 or 3 hours a night, using something that is regenerative, that is produced locally or very locally, and using that as a way to teach the villagers how some of these things, or some of the materials and resources that they didn't realize had value, again, would continue to create industries and provide for some of their needs. Agriculture, it is very intensive and uses a lot of fuel and uses a lot of fertilizer. And so, using permaculture principles, sourcing the fuel from methane, or sourcing intercropping, and using certain permaculture techniques that are not as labor intensive but use the local resources that are available. And I'm sure that there are plenty in the rainforest, things that attract mosquitoes away from the rest of the crops. Those are going to be very beneficial for them to learn. And also, it's a skill that they, as time sort of goes and they are able to see what works and doesn't work, information that they can share with other people who are interested in that kind of work. So one of the things that we also wanted to really emphasize is teaching them how their local resources can be identified and crafted into items that are usable during this first stage, because if creating revenue is something that is important, it's like putting a kid who wants to make money in a course that's theoretical. We've sat through those classes before, and if you've ever wondered why you're learning this, and you didn't really feel like you had anything to show for it, you tend to not be as much engaged in the education. So what we wanted to do was sort of eliminate that and give the villagers hands-on things that they could do, so that they have something that they can market and sell to the other villages, that's something that's useful, and become sort of a model for the other villages in learning how to recognize the value of what they have. And this is something that could be achieved much faster than if they were waiting for an NGO or an investor to come in and provide them with foreign produced goods. One of the reasons that we really wanted to focus on permaculture and using permaculture principles, particularly for the agriculture and agroforestry, was that it would free more time for the villagers to pursue more vocational training in different areas that they could use to expand their businesses, as well as their own personal educational pursuits. And it's something that, as they are able to produce goods from the education, from the hands-on learning, and have something to show for it, something that can be traded, that the revenue from that could be used to pay for better tools and products as the needs for their businesses and farms and industries expand much faster than if they were relying on some of the conventional methods used today.